One day, he stumbled upon a hidden box in the attic, one he had never seen before. Scrawled across the top, in his wife's handwriting, were two words that sent a chill through him. Destroy this. Curious, yet uneasy, he opened the box. Inside, he found old photographs, their family photo album, souvenirs from past travels, and even thoughtful gifts he had given over the years, all the things that had mysteriously vanished from their home. At first, he couldn't understand why she had hidden them. But as he pieced it together, the truth was more shocking than he ever expected. Here's how it all unfolded. Marcus believed in love, but the real kind, not the dramatic, movie-style gestures. To him, love was about finding the right person, building a life, and surviving everyday annoyances. So when he met Sabrina in their early 20s, it felt like he'd hit the jackpot. She was stunning, sharp-witted, and carried an effortless charm that made people naturally gravitate toward her. Together, they were that couple, the one that made people stop and think, wow, they're perfect for each other. Late-night drives, deep conversations, spontaneous road trips, their relationship felt like something straight out of a montage from a romantic drama. And when they got married, Marcus was convinced he had secured a lifelong partnership. They had dreams, big ones. Traveling the world, building a future together. For a while, everything seemed to fall into place. But perfection has a way of deceiving you, and reality? Well, it sneaks up like a parking ticket you forgot about until it doubles in price. Marcus was putting in long hours, pouring himself into his business, determined to make something of himself from the ground up. The stress was relentless, sleepless nights, a workload heavy enough to send a therapist into early retirement. But no matter how much was on his plate, he always made time for Sabrina. Dinners together, small surprises, weekend getaways, he made sure she knew she was a priority. At first, she seemed to appreciate it. She was proud of him, supportive, his biggest fan. Until, suddenly, she wasn't. At first, the change was barely noticeable, small comments about needing more space, hints about wanting to focus on herself. Marcus, being the supportive husband he prided himself on being, encouraged her. After all, personal growth was important, right? Yeah, that was his first mistake. Because Sabrina's idea of focusing on herself didn't involve self-care, therapy, or a new hobby. No, what she really meant was doing whatever she wanted, whenever she wanted, without a second thought about how it affected their marriage. Marcus found himself stuck in an odd limbo. He was present, but not really seen. Appreciated, but only in the way you appreciate good Wi-Fi. You don't notice it until it stops working. At first, he chalked it up to a rough patch. Every marriage has them, right? So he did what any devoted husband would do. He tried harder. He avoided arguments. He swallowed his frustration. He brought her flowers, perfume, even that absurdly expensive handbag she had been eyeing. None of it made a difference. She thanked him occasionally, but there was no real emotion behind it. No excitement, no gratitude, just a half-hearted smile before she turned her attention back to scrolling through her phone. What once felt like a team effort had become a one-person show. And Marcus? He was just a background character in the Sabrina show. One evening, after an exhausting day at work, Marcus decided to bring home dinner, thinking a quiet night together might help. Sabrina barely looked up from her phone. I already ate, she said flatly, still scrolling through an influencer's Instagram story. Marcus tried to keep his voice neutral. Would have been nice if you told me before I picked up takeout. She shrugged, not even bothering to look at him. You should have texted. That night, as they sat on opposite ends of the couch, Marcus started to see it more clearly. Sabrina wasn't just distant, she acted like she was above him. And then came the conversation. It happened after one of her girls' nights out, which, lately, had become far more frequent. She came home tipsy, tossing her bag onto the couch, looking at Marcus like he was some kind of unpaid intern. You know, she stretched dramatically, sometimes I think about how many men would do anything to be with me. Marcus blinked. Excuse me? Sabrina grinned. That grin. The kind that said, oh, you poor, clueless man. Think about it, she continued, collapsing onto the couch. I could walk into any bar right now, and at least 5 guys would be lining up to take me home. I mean, I love you and all, but let's be real, men are obsessed with me. Marcus took a slow, deep breath, resisting the urge to throw a pillow at her face. So, what, you want a round of applause for existing? Sabrina laughed. Oh, babe, don't be jealous. I'm just saying a woman like me has options. Options. That word hit Marcus like a bucket of ice water. She wasn't just pulling away, she felt entitled to admiration, like being adored was her birthright and Marcus should feel honored just to be in her presence. At that moment, something inside Marcus snapped. This wasn't just a rough patch. This wasn't stress. Sabrina didn't respect him anymore. Hell, she barely even liked him. And if there was one thing Marcus knew about relationships, it was this: you can't fix something if the other person isn't even willing to try. Marcus wasn't the confrontational type. He wasn't one for yelling matches or throwing down dramatic ultimatums. No, he was a let's figure this out kind of guy. But how do you fix a marriage when your wife openly tells you she's God's gift to men, and you should be grateful she still picks you? Spoiler alert, you don't. But Marcus? He wasn't ready to accept that. Not yet. So he did what he always did. He swallowed his frustration, forced a neutral expression, and convinced himself it was just a phase, that she would snap out of it. It started the way it always did, with Marcus waiting up. Again. Sabrina was out again. This time, she had called it a self-care night, which, judging by her history, meant overpriced cocktails and men who called themselves entrepreneurs but didn't even have a LinkedIn profile. Marcus sat on the couch, staring at the clock. Midnight. 1 a.m. 2 a.m. Then, finally, the sound of a car pulling up outside. He let out a slow breath. The front door swung open, and in stumbled Sabrina, reeking of alcohol. She didn't even acknowledge Marcus. Just tossed her purse onto the couch, kicked off her heels like a queen returning from a party thrown in her honor, and reached for a bottle of water. Marcus stayed where he was. Calm. Too calm. Sabrina, he said evenly, do you even realize what you're doing? She rolled her eyes before he even finished speaking. Oh, here we go. Marcus ignored the exaggerated eye roll. This isn't just about you coming home late, he said, keeping his voice steady. You're pushing me away. You don't even act like a wife anymore. Sabrina let out a sharp, mocking laugh. Oh, please, she scoffed, shaking her head. You think I need you? Sabrina had grown increasingly irritated by everything about Marcus, his presence, his habits, even the smallest reminders of him. Then, one day, he noticed something unsettling. His old photographs were missing. Their shared pictures gone without a trace. The shelf that once displayed souvenirs from their travels together now sat bare. Even their family photo album had disappeared. It was as if she was methodically erasing their history, wiping away every trace of the life they had built. When he brought it up, she let out a dismissive laugh. You're just misplacing things. But he knew the truth. He remembered exactly where they had been. And now, they were nowhere to be found. And there it was. The moment. The instant when everything clicked into place. She wasn't just brushing him off, she was taunting him. You think you're special? She continued, casually twirling a strand of her perfectly styled hair. Plenty of men want me. If you leave, I could replace you tomorrow. Not eventually. Not someday. But first thing tomorrow. Marcus didn't react. He didn't yell. He didn't smash a glass like some bitter movie protagonist. He just sat there, processing. Because when your wife looks you in the eye and tells you you're replaceable, what's left to fight for? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Sabrina straightened up, flipping her hair over her shoulder like she had just given a TED talk on why I'm the prize and you're not. I'm done living by your rules, she declared. I'm done living by anyone's rules. This is my life, and neither you nor society gets to tell me how to live it. Then, with a smug little smirk, she added, I'm in my baby girl era now, Marcus. Either deal with it or don't. Marcus took a slow, deep breath, and then he smiled. Not a bitter smile. Not an angry one. Just a calm, resigned, I'm officially done here kind of smile. All right, he said simply. Sabrina blinked. All right? Marcus stood up, stretched, grabbed his phone from the coffee table. You want to be in your baby girl era? Go for it. And with that, he walked past her, heading for the bedroom. Sabrina stood there, waiting for a fight, a guilt trip, maybe even an apology. She got nothing. Because for the first time in their marriage, Marcus no longer cared. The next morning, Marcus did what every man does when he's had enough. He called a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. The lawyer. The kind of guy who could leave a billionaire's ex-wife with nothing but a bus pass and a good luck. Marcus wasn't interested in games. He didn't want reconciliation. He wasn't looking for compromise. He wanted one thing, a clean break. And Sabrina? She barely reacted. When he told her he was filing for divorce, she didn't even look up from her phone. Okay, she said flatly, still scrolling through Instagram. If that's what you want. That was it. No shock. No anger. No tears. No desperate plea to work things out. Just complete indifference. Marcus should have been relieved. Instead, it annoyed him. Not because he wanted her to beg, but because after everything they had been through, this was all their marriage meant to her. He bit his tongue and let it go. If she wanted to be heartless about it, so be it. The divorce moved fast, partly because Marcus refused to drag it out, partly because Sabrina couldn't be bothered to argue over anything that didn't involve a brunch reservation. They had no kids, no real joint assets. Marcus wasn't about to fight over furniture or their shared Netflix account. A few weeks later, it was official. As Marcus packed up the last of his belongings, ready to leave behind the life he once thought was forever, he found himself drawn to the attic, a place he rarely had a reason to go. Dusty boxes lined the space, filled with forgotten remnants of their past. But one box stood out. It wasn't shoved into a corner or buried beneath old keepsakes. It sat near the entrance, as if someone had meant to get rid of it but never followed through. Scrawled across the top, in Sabrina's unmistakable handwriting, were two words that sent a chill through him. Destroy this. Curiosity, or maybe instinct, made him lift the lid. Inside, he found everything that had quietly disappeared from their home over the past months. The missing photographs. The souvenirs from trips they had once cherished. Their family photo album, the one he thought had been lost, or worse, forgotten. Piece by piece, he pulled out fragments of a life that Sabrina had tried to erase. She hadn't just removed these things from sight. She had wanted them gone. As if by destroying the evidence, she could rewrite history, make their marriage nothing more than a passing phase, a mistake easily discarded. And in that moment, Marcus understood something that had been staring him in the face for far too long. Her love hadn't just faded, it had vanished the moment she stopped respecting him. And without respect, love doesn't just weaken. It dies. Sabrina never cared about respect. She never valued the small moments that make a marriage strong, the quiet sacrifices, the unspoken trust, the mutual admiration that turns two people into true partners. To her, love wasn't about building something lasting. It was about feeling admired in the moment. Sabrina, for her part, seemed to be thriving. She was free. She could do whatever she wanted. And she made damn sure the world knew it. Instagram flooded with posts. New chapter, new me. No man, no problems. Knowing your worth is the ultimate glow-up. She was out every night. Rooftop parties, overpriced cocktails, endless photos of her laughing with women who looked like they were having the same existential crisis. Not once did she acknowledge their past. Not once did she reflect, grieve, or even pause. Because for Sabrina, the divorce was not a loss. It wasn't even an inconvenience. It was just another transition, as easy and emotionless as switching brunch spots when the waitlist was too long. Sabrina thought she had one. And for a while, it seemed like she had. She had men in her DMs. She had options. She had attention. But what she didn't have? Substance. Because the men throwing themselves at her? They weren't looking for a wife. They weren't offering commitment. They were offering one thing and one thing only. Sabrina craved admiration. She got you up? Text at 2 in the morning. She wanted a fairy tale romance. She got guys who still lived with their moms. She wanted passion. She got dudes who couldn't even commit to picking a restaurant. Slowly, the excitement wore off. The parties felt repetitive. The flings felt empty. And worst of all, the men who actually wanted a relationship. Yeah, they weren't the kind of guys she wanted. Sabrina had spent years believing she was the prize. That any man would be lucky to have her. But she never considered one thing. What if the kind of man she actually wanted didn't want her back? Meanwhile, Marcus was thriving. Not in the fake, look how happy I am Instagram way, but in the real, my life has genuinely improved way. He poured himself into his business. Leveled up. His company grew faster than ever. He hit the gym. Got in the best shape of his life. He traveled. Reconnected with old friends. But most importantly, he learned how to be happy alone. For the first time in years, he wasn't fighting to be loved. He wasn't begging for attention. He wasn't waiting for someone to appreciate him. He just existed. And it felt good. Sabrina's name barely crossed his mind. Until one day, he ran into her. It was supposed to be a normal day. A quick stop at the department store, grab a few essentials and leave. No unexpected detours. But fate? Oh, fate loves a plot twist. Marcus turned a corner near the clothing section, and there she was. Sabrina, standing just a few feet away, shopping bag in hand, looking at him like she had just seen a ghost. For a split second, Marcus almost didn't recognize her. She still looked good, of course. Sabrina had always been good at keeping up appearances. But something was different. A crack in the confidence. a hesitation in her stance. Sabrina, the woman who once swore she could replace him overnight, suddenly seemed lost for words. Finally, she spoke. Her voice uncertain, almost hesitant. "Marcus?" He nodded. "Sabrina." Silence. Then, the classic nervous hair tuck. The move every woman makes when she's trying to regain control of the moment. "Wow," Sabrina said, forcing a small laugh. "You look different." Marcus shrugged. "Life's been good." That one hit. He could see it in her face. The slight shift in her expression, the flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. Then came the questions. "How have you been? What have you been up to?" The usual small talk people use to gauge just how much better, or worse, your life is without them. Marcus answered casually, keeping things light, never giving her too much. He wasn't rude, but he also wasn't giving her what she wanted. And what was she looking for? Regret? Bitterness? Maybe even resentment? What she got was indifference. After a few more minutes of awkward conversation, she hesitated, then offered a small, uncertain smile. "Maybe we could catch up sometime." Marcus smiled back. "Yeah, maybe." They both knew that was a lie. A few days later, it began. First, a text. A simple, casual, "Hey, it was nice seeing you the other day." Marcus hesitated, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Against his better judgment, he replied. And just like that, the floodgates opened. At first, it was surface-level small talk. Nothing deep, nothing personal, just harmless little check-ins. Then came the remember when messages. Then the "I've been thinking a lot about us." And Marcus? He wasn't stupid. He knew exactly what was happening. Sabrina wasn't just reminiscing, she was testing the waters. Because people like her? They don't realize what they had until they've already destroyed it. And suddenly, the man she once dismissed as replaceable didn't seem so replaceable anymore. Then one night, she made it official. "Let's meet up. Just dinner. Just to talk." Marcus stared at the message. For a brief moment, temptation flickered. Not because he wanted her back. Not because he missed her. But because some small, stupid part of him wanted to know. Would she finally admit she was wrong? Would she say the words she never said before? Would she give him the closure he never got? And then, just as quickly, he snapped out of it. Because what was the point? What was he really looking for? An apology? An explanation? A second chance at something that was already shattered beyond repair? No. Marcus didn't need closure from her. He needed to give it to himself. So he typed out a simple response. "I don't think that's a good idea." And that was it. No more texts. No more small talk. No more what-ifs. Marcus burned the bridge. For good. Sabrina didn't reply. Not immediately, anyway. But let's be honest, women like Sabrina? They don't just walk away quietly. A week later, she tried again. This time, with a classic guilt trip. "I just think it's sad that after everything we've been through, we can't even be friends." Oh, here we go. Marcus stared at the message, debating whether it was even worth a response. And then he realized, what was the point? Sabrina didn't want friendship. She wanted access. A way to keep a foot in his life. A backup plan. Just in case. Because that's what people like her do. They don't miss you. They miss having you as an option. Marcus smiled to himself, shook his head, and did what he should have done a long time ago. He blocked her. Not in a petty, "I hope she suffers" kind of way, but in a "this chapter is over, and I have better things to do" kind of way. And just like that, Sabrina was gone. For real this time. You know what Marcus didn't do after all that? He didn't stalk Sabrina's Instagram. He didn't try to make her jealous with living my best life posts. He didn't go on some self-destructive dating spree just to prove a point. No. Marcus just moved the hell on. He focused on himself. His business. His peace. His future. And that was the real revenge. Because nothing drives a toxic ex crazier than realizing they no longer have control over your emotions. Sabrina? She'd never admit it. But she knew. She knew she lost something real. And Marcus? He wasn't losing a single second of sleep over it. Because when you finally learn to choose yourself over people who take you for granted, you don't look back. And that, my friends, is how you win. But the story doesn't end there. Because Marcus? He wasn't just doing well. He was thriving. Business was booming. Life felt balanced. Most importantly, he wasn't wasting time on people who didn't deserve it. And then came the night that changed everything. It was an exclusive networking event, the kind where sharp minds gathered, exchanged ideas, and low-key sized each other up based on success. Marcus had been to these events before. But this time was different. Because that's when he met Lillian. The first thing he noticed? Her presence. Not just her looks, though yeah, she was stunning, but her energy. Lillian didn't just enter a room, she owned it. Not in a loud, attention-seeking way, but in a focused, purposeful, I know exactly who I am and what I want kind of way. And Marcus? He felt that. She was driven, sharp, but there was also something warm about her. A kindness that balanced her intensity. She had vision, ambition, and most importantly, she knew exactly what she wanted out of life. It didn't take long for them to find a rhythm. One conversation led to another, and before Marcus knew it, they were deep into discussions about business, life philosophies, and future goals, the real stuff. With Sabrina, everything had been about what she could get. With Lillian, it was about what they could build. Their conversations were electric. Not just flirty, though the spark was definitely there, but stimulating. They challenged each other, inspired each other, and more than anything, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in years. Excited. So he did what any smart man would do. He asked her out. And to his pleasant surprise, she said yes. Meanwhile, in Sabrina's world, the illusion was crumbling. While Marcus was experiencing something real, Sabrina was still chasing a fantasy. After the divorce, she convinced herself she was still the prize. That she could have any man she wanted. That she was just one lucky night away from proving to herself that she hadn't lost her charm. So naturally, she found herself in all the wrong places, with all the wrong men. First came Eric. Smooth, charming, always had the perfect excuse for everything. The problem? Eric was married. And not technically still married, but separated, no. Fully married. Wife, 2 kids, white picket fence, the whole deal. By the time Sabrina found out, she was livid. But deep down, she couldn't ignore the unsettling truth she never even bothered to check. Because in her mind, she was still untouchable. If a man flirted with her, it had to mean something, right? Wrong. Then came Jared. Jared was different. Or at least, he made her think he was. He had that effortless charm, the kind that made you feel like you were the only woman in the world. He told her everything she wanted to hear, that she was incredible, that he saw a future with her, that she deserved the world. Sabrina was hooked. Until she started noticing the red flags. Jared's money problems. His vague stories. The constant business deals that somehow never seemed to work out. Then came the favor. At first, it was small. Hey, can you spot me a couple hundred? Just until next week. Then it escalated. If you could just loan me $5,000, I could finally close this deal. It's a sure thing, babe. That's when Sabrina finally realized she was being played. Jared wasn't looking for a partner. He was looking for a wallet. For the first time in a long time, Sabrina did something smart. She walked away. But the damage was done. Because it hit her. All these men, all this attention she thought she had, it wasn't real. It was just an illusion she had built to protect herself from the truth. She was replaceable. Not because she wasn't beautiful. Not because she wasn't interesting. But because she had spent so much time chasing validation instead of building real connections. And suddenly, all those compliments, all those flirty smiles, all those free drinks at bars. They felt hollow. Because real value, the kind that lasts, isn't about how many people want you. It's about who truly respects and cherishes you. And for the first time, Sabrina wondered, had she ever really had that? She had it once. With Marcus. She had care, respect, love. And she threw it away. But accepting the truth was one thing. Living with it, well, that was something else entirely. Sabrina couldn't handle it. Instead of facing reality, she did what she had always done best. Manipulate, control, and destroy. She started small. You know, I've heard things about Marcus's business. Not all of them good. She would casually mention to mutual acquaintances. He always had a way of making himself look better than he really was. She whispered to an old friend still in touch with him. It's just sad that people don't see the truth about him. She hinted in cryptic social media posts, sowing doubt without saying anything outright. But rumors weren't enough. She needed to hit him where it really hurt, his career, his success. She began working her way into his professional circles, subtly discrediting him. She made sure to be seen at the right restaurants, the right events, flashing that charming smile, casually dropping remarks about Marcus that planted seeds of doubt. I just hope he's doing things by the book. You never know these days. Oh, I'd be careful signing with him. He's persuasive. People believe what they want to believe, especially when it feeds their own insecurities and fears. And for a while, it worked. Deals started falling through. Trusted clients hesitated. Employees began whispering. Marcus felt the shift. He saw the hesitation in people's eyes. Something was happening. Then, one evening, he walked into an upscale restaurant for a business dinner, and there she was. Sabrina, sitting at a corner table, laughing, leaning in close to one of his potential partners, her voice low, her expression sly. There was no mistaking it now. She wasn't just bitter. She wanted to destroy him. But here's the thing about playing with fire. It burns out of control faster than you expect. Sabrina was good at manipulation. She always had been. But this time, she had underestimated two things. First, Marcus was no longer the man she could break. And second, she was unraveling faster than she could keep up. She had become obsessed. So obsessed with seeing Marcus fail that she stopped noticing the cracks forming in her own life. At first, they were small. Friends distancing themselves, tired of hearing her bring up Marcus in every conversation. Work stress piling up, missed deadlines, short tempers, a few too many off days. One night, after too many drinks, she snapped at a colleague during a networking event. People stared. Another night, she was thrown out of a bar after an argument with a man who had lost interest the moment she showed too much of herself. She was losing her grip. And then, one night, it happened. A full-blown panic attack, right in the middle of an upscale lounge, in front of everyone she once sought to impress. Her hands trembled. Her breath came in short, desperate gasps. She clutched the edge of the bar as the world spun around her. "Miss, are you okay?" Someone asked, but she barely heard them. She wasn't okay. For the first time in her life, she had no control over the story, because the truth was written all over her face. She wasn't untouchable. She wasn't powerful. She was just lost. And worse, no one cared. Not the men who once lined up to buy her drinks. Not the friends who used to envy her confidence. Not even Marcus, who, despite everything, was now nothing more than a ghost in her past. That night, for the first time in her life, Sabrina wasn't the center of attention. She was just another woman at a bar, crumbling, and no one was watching. The next morning, as she stared at her reflection, makeup smudged, eyes hollow, confidence shattered, she knew. She needed help. Not another drink. Not another fling. Not another desperate attempt to rewrite history. Real help. That afternoon, she made the call. A therapist. Because she finally understood. Marcus wasn't the problem. Her past wasn't the problem. She was. And if she didn't change, she wouldn't just lose everything she once had. She'd lose herself. As word spread about Sabrina's mental health struggles, many of Marcus's former business partners began reaching out to him. Some wanted to verify the rumors, while others sought to rebuild the professional relationships they had once distanced themselves from. What had initially seemed like a setback quickly turned into an advantage. The doubt that had surrounded Marcus's reputation dissolved as people realized they had been misled. Trust was restored, and opportunities that once seemed lost resurfaced. In the end, the very storm Sabrina had tried to create only strengthened Marcus's position. His business didn't just recover, it thrived, with more support and credibility than ever before. Meanwhile, Marcus and Lillian had been on a few dates. And let's just say, this wasn't like before. There were no guessing games. No who cares less wins. No ego battles. Just two people who genuinely enjoyed each other's company. Lillian was fascinating. She had her own ambitions, her own dreams, her own path. She wasn't looking for a man to complete her. She was already complete. And for Marcus, that was refreshing. They laughed. They challenged each other. They built something real. And little by little, Marcus started feeling something he never felt with Sabrina. A true partnership. Not a game. Not a transaction. But something built on mutual respect, admiration, and care. And as he looked across the table at Lillian, listening to her talk passionately about a new business project, he realized something. He wasn't just dating again. He was falling. For someone who actually deserved him this time. If you enjoyed the story, please like and subscribe to the channel.